Hey Maarten, I'm shooting a video with the Sony A6100. I'm new to the camera and to video. What are the right settings for someone who doesn't have time to fiddle around? Okay, well, I'm also fairly new to the A6100, but it's very similar to other Sony models, so here's what I recommend. I'll keep this as simple as I can, and I'll let you in on a few advanced tips and hacks at the end, like recording on an external recorder. Use an SDXC memory card, preferably rated U3 or V30, and then start on Menu Tab 5, Screen 5, and format the card. But make sure to back up anything on the card first. In January 2020, firmware is still at version 1.0, but keep an eye on Sony's support pages and do download and install them when they appear. Videos can be recorded in any mode, but use video mode on the dial. It provides more control, turns on audio, and sets the display to the 16:9 resolution. I've reset this camera to its default settings, so you know where I'm starting, but that's also a good way to make sure that there are no odd settings activated. For video settings, Tab 2 Screen 1, use XAVCS 4K. It's better quality, can easily be down-converted to HD, and may provide some additional options in editing. Unless, of course, you're limited by memory cards, computer editing power, and space. Then select XAVCS HD. Now, for video, meaning anything distributed online or to be displayed on a TV set, 30 frames 100. If your production will be displayed in a cinema, 24 frames 100. 100 refers to the data rate. Using 60 reduces quality slightly, but doesn't eat up card space as quickly. And those are the NTSC settings. Go to Tab 5 Screen 2 to switch to the 25-based PAL system. On the same screen, select M, Manual Exposure. Press the right side of the control dial for ISO, Auto, and then press Right. Set the minimum to 100, maximum to 12.8. That enables the camera to manage the exposure for you. Assuming you're shooting people, Tab 1 Screen 5, Face Eye Detection, turn it on, select human or animal, depending on your subjects. Touch is on by default, so touch any subject to focus on it. Press the Fun button to confirm autofocus continuous mode and select the autofocus area. Wide works for most scenes. Over 1 to white balance. Select a setting appropriate for the lighting, never auto, which will make subtle shifts while you shoot, making editing difficult. Using the back control wheel, turn to set the shutter speed to 1/60th. For dark interiors 1/30th, or any setting in between. Using the top control dial, set the aperture to the smallest number. This will be different for each lens, and this will soften the background. Use a larger number for a shot where foreground and background are in focus, or if you want even softer, zoom in and back off, keeping the subject as close to the lens as possible. Now, those settings may be too bright if you're shooting outside. The camera will warn you by flashing auto ISO. You can adjust your aperture setting or use an ND filter. When the camera thinks the scene is properly exposed, but it looks too bright or dark to you, press the bottom of the control wheel and turn the dial to override the auto exposure with EV adjustments. Alternately, press the right side of the control dial and set the ISO manually. And those settings will provide the maximum return for minimal effort. If you would like to save those settings to return to them quickly, use Tab 1 Screen 4, Memory, and register them. Later, to return to those settings, turn the dial to MR and select the memory slot with the settings that you saved. Working video shooters prefer prime lenses and don't zoom much or zoom only between shots. That's probably good advice, unless you have a parfocal lens. This 24 to 105 G Master lens isn't strictly parfocal, which means that the lens doesn't lose focus as you change the focal length, but it is pretty good. Sony and others do make lenses specifically designed for camera or video, parfocal lenses, like the 28 to 135, which I've reviewed. Well, now I'm ready to press the red button to start recording, but you can optionally, on tab 2 screen 3, set the shutter to stop and start recording. I like the confirmation beep at the start and the chime at the end. Turn those off on screen 9. The A6100 can record until you run out of card space or battery power, but can also be externally powered with USB. A little plug appears beside the battery level indicator. Now, last thing, because it is a small camera, recording time may also be limited by overheating. The manual indicates that at 40 degrees Celsius it may be limited to 20 minutes. Use tab 5, screen 2, to set the power off temperature to high. I hope your shoot goes well. Now, if you can spare a few more minutes, I'll provide some advanced tips. Here's what I do beyond what I just described. I usually set a custom white balance, either by setting the degrees Kelvin or by creating a custom white balance. Capturing an accurate white balance for any scene takes just a few seconds. Press Set, then put a white or neutral gray card in the scene, press the center button, then confirm to save. Touch is useful if you need to change focus between two subjects. Although autofocus is usually reliable, if a situation is tricky or the distance to the subject isn't changing, I use manual. And after I've composed the shot, I use the Fun menu to switch to manual focus to prevent it from wandering. To get an accurate manual focus, customize the C1 button to focus magnifier. Press it once to set the expanded view area. Use the control dial as a cursor to move it. Press again to see the expanded view and focus, and then press to return. Or use peaking to check your manual focus. Turn it on, select your level, and then a color that's easy to see in the scene. The color outline appears around the focused subject. When the lens doesn't zoom far enough, tab 2 screen 5 turns on clear image zoom, which is a nearly unnoticeable quality loss in video. Preset the amount of additional crop that you need. Speaking of crop, you may notice that some settings have a Super 35mm badge, and those that do not, like HD 120 and 4K 30, crop in slightly. The next step to improving your video production is audio. And the onboard mics are fine for background ambience, but you can improve the sound using an external mic, and there are lots to choose from. I'm wearing a VT502. It's mounted on the inside of my glasses on a cable which connects to the red mic input. If the on-screen meters are flickering too close to the right end, use Menu, Tab 2, Screen 2 to turn them down. Now, for this mic, I find about 10 to be best. And remember that it's much easier to turn up a slightly low recording than to get rid of the distortion caused by too high a setting. The A6100 does not have picture profiles, but the Creative Styles can accomplish some of the same settings. To record a more neutral image, if you intend to color grade in editing, turn the color and the sharpness down. That will also give your production a slightly more cinematic look. Now, for a black and white scene, use Creative Style to select black and white. And for more dramatic effects, many of the picture effects work in video. You can set your exposure by eye. and press Disp to display the histogram, a technical display that should be centered. If it hits the right side, it's overexposed under on the left, but exposure can be a creative decision. Zebra can provide a more accurate setting. On tab 2 screen 6, set Zebra to 100, and this alerts me to any area in the image that's overexposed. If that results in an underexposed subject, an inexpensive on-camera LED light can help, but lights like this are useful for all kinds of situations, providing a little fill and modeling light. One reason not to use Auto ISO is that as it's continually making adjustments, the resulting footage may be distracting and harder to edit. Set the ISO manually by turning it up or down until the zebra stripes are eliminated or minimized. Judgment call. Now, the most important element in a scene is usually a human face, and Zebra can help get the exposure right. For my skin type, I set a custom level with the standard at 70 and the range at 5. Check with Google to find the right settings for different skin colors. Adjust the exposure using the ISO to cover the subject with stripes. I'm using an Adamus Ninja, primarily to record these menu and screen displays. On the A6100, these displays output only in HD. Use tab 5 screen 3, the HDMI settings, to turn the HDMI info display off for a clean image. The advantage of external recording is higher quality, as the Ninja records using ProRes, which means less compression and a higher data rate than the internal XAVCS recordings. I also find it easier to focus with the larger screen, and there's a waveform display for more accurate exposure readings. While some Sony cameras can trigger an external recorder to start and stop, the A6100 does not, and it also does not support timecode. Likely you won't miss either of those. There are some peculiarities. For instance, in HD, all outputs are 1080-60 to the external recorder. To record at 24 frames, set the record setting to 24, and although it seems that the tab 5 screen 3 HDMI settings 2460 selector would do, it won't take effect until the HDMI resolution is changed to 2160 1080. For 4K on the same screen, use 4K output to select the output option. Marker settings on tab 2, screen 3. Select one of the options if, for example, you're using a different aspect ratio. Then turn the marker display on or off. 80% safety zone helps to remind you to keep your primary subject within this area. By the way, on a tripod, turn SteadyShot off. On the 24-105, it's the switch on the lens. And shooting handheld, use the viewfinder. It really does make your shot steadier. And as the stabilization depends on the lens, for most handheld shooting, you'll want a gimbal. Thanks for watching. I hope this helps and your shoot goes well. If you have questions or comments, I do enjoy interacting with you, so please post your relevant questions and civil comments below. I'd like to thank all of my subscribers. Your interest and support is appreciated. And if you're thinking about subscribing, I promise to provide more helpful tips, as well as hands-on and honest reviews of cameras. I may occasionally get in a canoe.